Giwan Kim stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber and kept his face perfectly calm. He had been standing there for 3 hours now, listening to Magistrate Vren list all the reasons why humanity did not deserve to keep their mining colonies in the Kepler belt. The magistrate's voice was loud and proud, like he was reading from a children's book to students who were not very smart. Around Giwan, the other council members sat in their floating seats, watching with the kind of bored interest that people have when they already know how a story will end. Some of them were not even paying attention. A few were looking at data tablets. One was clearly sleeping. This was how it always went. Humans would complain about something unfair. The council would listen with fake politeness. Then they would rule against humanity anyway. And Giwan would smile and bow and say thank you for your consideration, just like he always did. Furthermore, Vren continued, his scales gleaming under the chamber lights, humanity lacks the military infrastructure to properly defend these territories. It is irresponsible of the Council to allow such valuable resources to remain in the TS hands of those who cannot protect them. Noticed how Vren said cannot protect them, instead of will not protect them. It was a small detail, but an important one. The Vrelians thought humans were weak. They thought humans were scared. They thought humans would never fight back no matter what was taken from them. They had thought this for a very long time. Giwan had done nothing to change their minds. Ambassador Kim, Speaker Thaldra said in his dry, ancient voice. The old reptilian looked like he had been sitting in that chair since before humans discovered fire. Do you have a response to these claims? Quan took a breath. He thought about the 3 colonies. He thought about the 15,000 humans who lived and worked there. He thought about the mines they had built with their own hands, the stations they had constructed piece by piece, the families they had raised in the cold darkness between the stars. He thought about the other colonies that had been taken, the trade routes that had been closed, the contracts that had been broken, the promises that had been made and then forgotten. 3 years. That was how long Giwan had been Earth's ambassador to this council. 3 years of smiling. 3 years of bowing. 3 years of accepting insults with grace and theft with understanding. I would like to request a formal hearing, Giwan said. His voice was steady and professional. Under Article 47 of the Council Charter, any member species has the right to request denied, Vren interrupted. Several council members laughed. It was not loud laughter or cruel laughter. It was worse. It was the tired laughter of people who found something mildly amusing but not worth real attention. Guan felt something change inside his chest. It was like a switch being flipped, like a door being closed, like a mask being removed. I see, he said quietly. Speaker Thaldros made a gesture with one clawed hand. The council recognizes the Vrelian claim to the disputed territories. All human personnel are to evacuate within 30 standard days. This session is we will be leaving, Jiwan said. The chamber went quiet. Not because what Jiwan said was shocking, but because he had interrupted the speaker. Nobody interrupted the speaker. It simply was not done. Yes, Ambassador Kim Thaldros said with heavy patience. As I stated, you have 30 days to evacuate your people from. No, Guan said. I meant we will be leaving the council. Effective immediately. Now the chamber was really quiet. Vren stopped smiling. Several council members who had been looking at their tablets looked up. The one who had been sleeping opened one eye. You cannot leave the council, Vren said. He sounded confused, like Jiwan had just said something that made no sense at all. Membership is permanent. Once a species joins, we never said we were quitting, Jiwan corrected him. His voice was still calm, still professional, but something in it had changed. Something that made a few of the smarter council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. We are simply leaving. There is a difference. He turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. Ambassador Kim. Thaldros called after him. You cannot simply walk out of a council session. There are procedures. There are protocols. Guan stopped at the door. He did not turn around. We followed your procedures for 3 years. We respected your protocols. We accepted your decisions even when they were unjust. We did everything you asked of us. He looked back over his shoulder. His face was completely empty of expression now. No smile, no warmth. Just a flat, cold blankness that several council members would later describe as deeply unsettling. You taught us that none of it mattered, Jiwan said. Thank you for the lesson. Then he was gone. The council chamber erupted into confused conversation. Varen was shouting something about disrespect and consequences. Thaldros was demanding order. Other members were talking over each other, trying to figure out what had just happened. None of them noticed. When every human in the building quietly packed their things and left, the maintenance workers, the technical staff, the cultural liaisons, the trade representatives, all of them simply walked out and did not come back. 12 hours later, Guan sat in his office on Earth, looking at a secure communications screen. On it was Fleet Admiral Heian Park, a man with gray hair and tired eyes who had spent 40 years preparing for something he hoped would never happen. The council has tried to contact us 17 times, Hyun said. All military channels, all diplomatic channels, all emergency channels. I assume you want me to ignore them? Yes, Giwan said. He felt very tired suddenly. Tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. Authorized contingency Omega. Heian was quiet for a moment. Are you sure? Once we start this, there is no going back. They left us no choice, Juwan said. They took and took and took, and they laughed while they did it. They thought we would accept it forever because we are peaceful. They never understood that peaceful and weak are not the same thing. No, Heian agreed. They never did. How long until we are ready? Juwan asked. Heian smiled. It was not a happy smile. We have been ready for 3 years. We were just waiting for you to stop smiling. I am done smiling, Juwan said. Gudahan replied. Then let us show them what humanity looks like when we stop being polite. The screen went dark. Jiwan sat alone in his office and looked out the window at Earth below. Somewhere up there, the Galactic Council was probably still arguing about what had just happened. They were probably calling it a tantrum. They were probably making jokes about sensitive humans who could not take criticism. Let them laugh, Juwan thought. Let them laugh while they still can. He reached into his desk and pulled out a small box. Inside was a medal given to him by the Council 3 years ago for outstanding diplomatic service. He looked at it for a moment, then dropped it in the trash. Courteous mode was officially turned off. 40-8 hours passed and nobody from Earth answered their messages. The Galactic Council tried everything. They sent formal communications through diplomatic channels. They sent casual messages through back channels. They even tried calling Giwan's personal number, the one he had given them for emergencies. Nothing worked. Every human communication line was completely silent. This is ridiculous, Vren said, pacing back and forth in the Council security office. They cannot just ignore us. It violates a dozen different protocols. The security chief, a bulky creature named Vex, looked at his screens with growing concern. It is not just the diplomatic channels. All human vessels have stopped transmitting their location data. All human trade ships have failed to arrive at their scheduled ports, and every single human colony station has gone dark. Dark. Vren stopped pacing. What do you mean dark? I mean their communication arrays are offline. Their beacon signals have stopped. We are getting nothing from any human settlement anywhere in Council space. That is impossible, Vren said flatly. There are hundreds of human colonies. Thousands of human ships. They cannot all go silent at the same time unless he stopped talking. Dex looked at him and saw real concern on the magistrate's face for the first time. Unless it was coordinated, Dex finished quietly, across the galaxy. Director Salman Lee stood on the bridge of a massive transport ship and watched the last group of human civilians board. She was a small woman, with sharp eyes, and she had spent the last 3 months planning this evacuation down to the smallest detail. That is the last group from Kepler Station, her assistant reported. All human civilians are now out of contested zones. Salman nodded. She pulled up a star map on her tablet. Little green dots showed where human populations used to be. Now those dots were moving, flowing like water towards safer territories that the Council did not care about. Places that humans had quietly been building up for years, just in case. Any problems? She asked. A few Council security officers asked questions at stations 12 and 15. We told them we were going on vacation. Did they believe it? Her assistant smiled. They did not care enough to investigate further. That was the thing about the Council, Salmon thought. They had gotten so used to humans being harmless and obedient that they stopped paying attention. When your dog had never bitten anyone, you stopped worrying about its teeth. Good, Salmon said. Send confirmation to Fleet Admiral Park. Phase 1 is complete. All civilians are safe. Meanwhile, Magistrate Vren decided that if humans wanted to play games, he would show them what happened to children who misbehaved. He gathered a battle fleet of 20 ships and headed toward the Kepler colonies. If the humans had already evacuated, fine. He would claim the colonies as Varelian territory and be done with it. The fleet arrived at Kepler Station 3 days later. Vren stood on his command deck and looked at the station on his view screen. It looked normal. Lights were on. The docking bays were lit. Everything seemed fine. Life signs? He asked. None, his sensor officer reported. But the station is fully powered. All systems appear operational. Send a boarding team, Vren ordered. The boarding team went through the station slowly. Weapons ready, expecting a trap. They found no trap. They found something worse. They found nothing. The station was completely empty. Not abandoned in a hurry, but carefully evacuated. Food sat in refrigerators, still fresh. Personal items were gone, but furniture remained. Computer systems were running, but all data had been wiped. It was like everyone had simply vanished. It is the same at all 3 colonies, friends, second officer reported. No humans anywhere, but everything else is intact. Vren felt a chill run down his spine. This was wrong. People did not evacuate this cleanly, this completely. It took planning. It took coordination. It took resources that the Council had been absolutely certain humanity did not have. Claim the stations, Vren said, trying to sound confident. Postguards. These are Vrelian colonies now. Sent a message back to the Council claiming victory. The humans had run away like scared animals. The Vrelian expansion was proceeding as planned. Everything was fine. 3 days later, Reviant was not fine. A Vrelian patrol ship called the Morning Star was investigating an old human research station in deep space. It was routine work, boring work. It's the kind of thing junior officers got assigned when they annoyed their superiors. Then, suddenly every electronic system on the ship stopped working. Not broken. Not damaged. Just stopped. The engines died. The lights went out. The computers shut down. Even the backup systems, the ones that were supposed to be impossible to disable, simply turned off. The crew floated in darkness for 3 terrifying minutes before emergency power kicked in. By then, several crew members were crying. Others were praying. The captain was screaming into a dead communication system, trying to call for help. When the rescue ship arrived 2 days later, they found the Morning Star drifting in space like a dead fish. The crew was alive but traumatized. Every piece of advanced technology on the ship was ruined. Not broken by weapons fire. Not damaged by explosions. Just somehow reduced to expensive garbage. What happened? The rescue captain asked. The Morning Star's captain could only shake his head. I do not know. One moment everything was fine. The next moment, it was like the ship forgot how to be a ship. The report was filed. The Council read it. They assumed it was some kind of accident, some strange malfunction. These things happen sometimes in deep space. Then it happened again, and again, and again. 6 Vrelian outposts experienced complete system failures. A Krelian trade convoy's navigation computers stopped working, leaving them stranded between stars. A Vexian mining operation lost all their automated equipment at the same time. Drills stopped drilling. Processors stopped processing. Even simple tools that had worked for years suddenly refused to function. The only thing these incidents had in common was simple. They all happened at locations that used to belong to humans. Speaker Theldros called an emergency council meeting. Every member attended, which almost never happened. The chamber was full of worried faces and nervous whispers. "We have a problem," Theldros said. He looked older than usual, more tired. "The human silence is not a tantrum. It is a strategy." "What do you mean?" someone asked. Before Theldros could answer, every screen in the chamber lit up at the same time. A message was playing, audio only. The voice was calm and familiar. It was Jiwon Kim. "Members of the Galactic Council," Jiwon's voice said. "For 3 years, we asked you to treat us fairly. For 3 years, you dismissed our concerns. You took our colonies. You broke our contracts. You laughed at our requests for justice." The chamber was completely silent now. "You made a mistake," Jiwon continued. "You believed that because we were peaceful, we were weak. You believed that because we followed your rules, we had no choice. You believed that because we smiled and bowed, we were afraid of you."
Ow.
There was a pause. When Jiwon spoke again, his voice was colder. "You were wrong. We are not at war with you. War implies you have something we need to take. This is simply the removal of obstacles. Every system we maintained for you has been shut down. Every backdoor we built has been activated. Every piece of infrastructure you took from us is now worthless to you." Ren jumped to his feet. "This is terrorism. This is sabotage. This is consequences," Guan's voice interrupted, as if he could hear Vren speaking. "You wanted to see humanity without our courtesy. Congratulations. Here we are." The message ended. Every council member tried to respond, tried to open a communication channel to Earth, tried to demand explanations. Nothing worked. The communication systems were dead. Just like the patrol ships, just like the mining equipment, just like everything else humans had touched over the last 50 years. Somin. Lee stood in her office and allowed herself a small smile. Phase 2 was complete. The council was finally starting to understand. They had mistaken kindness for weakness. They had mistaken patience for fear. They had mistaken humanity's peaceful nature for an inability to do harm. Now they were learning the truth. Humanity had always been capable of violence. They had simply chosen not to use it until now. Fleet Admiral Hyen Park sat in Earth's Strategic Command Center, 300 meters below the surface, and watched the galaxy fall apart on his screens. Each screen showed a different crisis. Relian ships colliding during what was supposed to be an impressive military parade. Banking systems freezing credits belonging to council members who had voted against humanity. Defense satellites around council worlds suddenly locking out their own operators. "Sir," one of his officers said, "the council is trying to contact us again. 14th attempt this hour." "Ignore it," Hyun said. He sipped his tea. It was green tea, slightly bitter, exactly how he liked it. Let them wonder. Fear of the unknown is more powerful than fear of the known. On another screen, he watched Doyeon Choi work. Doyeon was a thin man with glasses and tired eyes. The kind of person you would walk past on the street without noticing. He had worked as a maintenance contractor for council systems for 12 years. He had fixed their computers, updated their software, smiled politely whenever they treated him like a servant. Nobody had ever bothered to check his work carefully. Why would they? He was just a human technician, harmless, helpful, always there when something broke, always able to fix it quickly. Every time he fixed something, he had left a little gift behind. A backdoor here, a vulnerability there. A piece of code that would sleep quietly for years, waiting for a signal that might never come until 3 days ago. When the signal came, now Doyeon sat in a comfortable chair in a secure facility on Earth. Drinking coffee and typing occasionally on his keyboard, he was not working very hard. He had designed all his tools years ago. Now they ran themselves, spreading through council systems like invisible ghosts, breaking things in ways that looked like accidents. How much longer can we maintain this? Hyun asked him. Doyeon shrugged. Indefinitely. I built in redundancies. Even if they find and close one back door, I have 17 others. Even if they replace their entire system, I know how they think. I can get back in. They will figure it out eventually, Hyun said. Of course, Do-Yen agreed. But by the time they do, we will have made our point. Across the galaxy, Captain Minho Kang piloted the stealth vessel Silent Judge through Council space. The ship was small and fast, painted black, with advanced systems that bent light around it like water around a stone. Council's sensors simply did not see it. Council patrols passed within a few kilometers and never knew it was there. Minho had been doing this for 2 days now, watching and recording. His mission was simple: observe Council military movements and strike precision targets when needed. So far, he had not needed to strike anything. The chaos from Do-Yen's cyber attacks was enough. Sir, his sensor officer said quietly. Varelian destroyer approaching. They are heading toward Outpost 7. Minho checked his screens. Outpost 7 was an old human research station. It had been abandoned when the humans evacuated, but apparently the Varelians wanted to claim it. Arm weapons, Minho said. Target their navigation system only. I want them disabled, not destroyed. The Silent Judge fired once. A beam of concentrated energy, invisible to most sensors, struck the Varelian destroyer's navigation computer. The ship lurched, spun, and began drifting sideways. Alarms were probably screaming inside. The crew was probably panicking. But they were alive. That was important. Humanity was not trying to kill anyone. They were trying to teach a lesson. The Silent Judge vanished back into the darkness. The Varelian crew never knew what hit them. Back on the Council homeworld, Magistrate Vren was having a very bad week. First, the colonies had been empty. Then his ships had started breaking. Now his military was reporting that invisible attackers were disabling vessels at random, always targeting propulsion or weapons, but never killing anyone. He stood in Speaker Thaldros's office, trying to keep his voice calm and failing. We must strike back, Vren insisted. We must show strength. Thaldros looked at him with ancient, tired eyes. Strike back at what? We cannot see them. We cannot track them. We cannot even communicate with them. How do you fight an enemy who is everywhere and nowhere? We go to Earth, Vren said. We take the fight to their homeworld. Overwhelming force. Show them what happens when they challenge the Council. And if it is a trap, Thaldros asked quietly. Then we spring it, Vren said. Better to die fighting than to sit here while our infrastructure collapses around us. Thaldros was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Very well. Assemble a coalition fleet. 60 capital ships. We will give them one chance to surrender. If they refuse, we will blockade their planet until they come to their senses. Vren smiled. Finally, action. Finally, something he understood. Not invisible cyber attacks and disappearing ships. Real warfare. Ship against ship. The kind of battle the Council had won 1,000 times before. What he did not know was that this was exactly what humanity wanted him to do. So Lee received the report about the Council. Fleeton immediately sent a message to all human colonies. It was short and simple. They are coming. Evacuate all military installations. 48 hours. She also sent a public broadcast to every civilian population in Council space. Not to the governments. Not to the military. To the people. Your leaders are sending a fleet to attack Earth, her message said. We have no desire to harm innocent lives. If you work at or live near major military installations, please evacuate within the next 48 hours. We will not ask again. The Council dismissed this as a bluff. Propaganda. Attempt to cause panic. But the civilians listened. They remembered the mysterious system failures. They remembered the ships that had been disabled without warning. They remembered that humanity had spent 50 years being peaceful and helpful. Maybe there was a reason they were not being peaceful anymore. People started leaving. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to cause chaos. Enough to clog transportation networks. Enough to make military commanders very nervous when their bases suddenly had empty apartments and abandoned shops. The Council tried to stop it, tried to calm people down, tried to say everything was under control. But the evacuations continued. 40-8 hours later, Council Coalition fleet departed for Earth. 60 capital ships. Thousands of crew members. Weapons charged. Shields up. Confidence high. They expected to find a frightened planet preparing to surrender. They expected to see a dozen human ships at most, probably hiding behind their moon. They expected an easy victory that would put the humans back in their place. Admiral Hayan Park watched them coming on his long-range sensors. He sat in his command chair and allowed himself a small smile. "They think we have 12 ships," he said to his staff. "Yes, sir," his operations officer confirmed. "Show them what we really have," Hayan ordered. "Begin Operation Revelation. Cross human space, from hidden shipyards and asteroid fields to concealed bases in the dark between stars, ships began moving. Hundreds of ships, not the small, humble vessels the Council was used to seeing. Large warships with sleek lines and powerful engines. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, battleships, an entire fleet that had been built in secret over 40 years. Hidden from Council sensors, disguised as civilian infrastructure, all waiting for the day when humanity finally stopped being polite. That day had arrived. Doyen. Choi typed one last command into his keyboard. Every communication system in Council space suddenly routed to the same channel. Every screen, every speaker, every holographic display showed the same thing. Earth's defensive fleet deploying around their homeworld. Hundreds of ships. All moving with perfect coordination, all clearly visible on sensors. A fleet that should not exist. A military force that dwarfed anything the Council had believed possible. And in the center of it all, Fleet Admiral Han Park's face appeared on every screen. "Members of the Galactic Council," he said calmly. "You wanted war. We gave you every opportunity to choose peace. You insisted on violence. Very well. Come to Earth. Let us show you what humanity looks like when we stop pretending to be harmless." The broadcast ended. The Council fleet continued toward Earth, but now the confidence was gone. Now, they were flying toward an enemy that had just revealed itself to be far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Minnow. Kong received new orders on the Silent Judge. No more observation. No more precision strikes. Now it was time for real combat. He looked at his crew. Young faces. Nervous faces. Ready faces. Remember, he told them, "We are not the aggressors. We are not the villains. They came to our home. They threatened our families. All we are doing is defending what is ours." His crew nodded. They understood. The Silent Judge accelerated toward the approaching Council fleet, invisible and deadly. A ghost carrying a very sharp knife, the Council Coalition fleet dropped out of faster than light. Travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Admiral Vryn stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, and stared at the tactical display in front of him. His confidence died in that moment. The display showed not 12 human ships, not 20, not 50. It showed hundreds of vessels arranged in a defensive formation around Earth's moon. Sleek warships that looked nothing like the clumsy cargo haulers the Council was used to seeing. These ships had aggressive lines, powerful engines, and weapon arrays that made Vryn's blood run cold. "How many?" he whispered. His tactical officer's voice shook slightly. 347 capital ships. A known number of fighters and support craft. "Sir, these are not merchant vessels. These are purpose-built warships. Their power signatures are off the scale." Vryn's communications officer spoke up. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it on screen," Vryn said. Fleet Admiral Han Park's face appeared. He looked calm and professional, like a teacher about to explain something simple to a slow student. "Council fleet," Han said. "You have entered Earth's defensive perimeter. You have one opportunity to withdraw peacefully. Turn around now, and no harm will come to you. Proceed further, and we will consider it an act of war. You have 60 seconds to decide." Vryn felt anger replace his fear. How dare they? How dare these primitive humans threaten the might of the Council? Even with more ships than expected, they were still just humans. Soft, weak, species that had never won a war in their entire history. All ships, Vren ordered. Combat formation. Prepare to engage. We will show these apes what happens when they challenge their betters. The Council fleet began advancing. 60 capital ships against 300. The math was bad, but Vren had something the humans did not: experience. The Council had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Humans were newcomers, probably flying ships they barely understood. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The silent judge struck first. Captain Minho Kong brought his stealth ship alongside the Eternal Glory, closer than any Council sensor could detect, and fired a concentrated burst directly into the flagship's weapon control systems. The Glory's massive cannons went offline instantly. Secondary systems failed. Backup protocols activated and immediately shut down again. What happened? Vren shouted. Why are our weapons offline? Unknown, sir. All weapon systems have been disabled. Engineering reports they are trying to... The officer never finished his sentence, because that was when the human fighters arrived. They came from every direction at once. A small craft that moved faster than anything Vren had ever seen. They did not fly in the neat formations that Council doctrine required. They flew like hunters, like predators. Each pilot making independent decisions based on constantly changing circumstances. A group of 5 fighters swarmed around a Council destroyer. They did not simply shoot at it. They studied it, probed it, found its weaknesses. Then they struck in perfect coordination, disabling the engines with surgical precision. The destroyer began drifting, helpless but intact. Return fire, Vren ordered. All ships, return fire. The Council ships tried. They really did. But every time they locked onto a human fighter, it was already somewhere else. The human pilots pulled maneuvers that should have killed them from the G-forces alone, turns that should have been impossible, speeds that should have torn their ships apart, and they never stopped moving, never stopped adjusting, never stopped learning. Lieutenant Eunice So led her squadron against a Vreliant cruiser. She was young and small, barely tall enough to see over her cockpit controls. But she flew like someone who had been born in space. Her wingman followed her lead as she analyzed the cruiser's defense pattern. They rotate their shields every 40 seconds, she reported. When the front shield drops to recharge, we have a 2-second window. On my mark, she counted down. Her squadron synchronized their attack perfectly. They fired in the exact 2-second window when the shields were transitioning. The cruiser's bridge took minor damage, enough to knock out communications but not enough to kill anyone. The cruiser drifted away, crew alive, ship disabled. Exactly as planned. This was happening everywhere. Human ships overwhelming Council defenses, not through brute force, but through speed, coordination, and tactical excellence. Every Council ship that was disabled had its crew safely evacuated before any critical systems failed. Every attack was precise, calculated, designed to remove threats without unnecessary casualties. The Council fleet fought like civilized soldiers, structured formations, honorable tactics. Following doctrine written centuries ago, humanity fought like evolution had intended. Fast, adaptable, creative, absolutely focused on winning. Vren watched his fleet fall apart in real time. Ships went dark on his display one by one. Distress calls flooded his communications. Captains reported impossible things. Impossible maneuvers. Impossible accuracy. Impossible everything. All back. Vren finally ordered, all ships retreat too. The Eternal Glory shuddered as something hit its engines. Not destroyed. Just disabled. The massive flagship began drifting like all the others. Boarding craft detected. Someone shouted, "Human Marines are attaching to our hull." Vren grabbed a weapon and ran toward the bridge entrance. If the humans wanted a ship, they would have to take it from his cold, dead hands. The doors opened. Vren raised his weapon. Lieutenant Uniseo stood there in combat armor, weapon pointed at his chest. Behind her, a squad of human Marines secured the bridge with professional efficiency. They moved fast, covered angles, neutralized threats without hesitation. "Drop your weapon," Yuna said calmly. Her accent was noticeable, but her meaning was clear. Vren looked at her. She was so small, so young, but her eyes were absolutely cold. She would shoot him if he did not comply. She would not hesitate. She would not regret it. He dropped his weapon. "Magistrate Vren," Yuna said, "you are under arrest for theft, aggression, and war crimes against the human people. Admiral Han Park sends his regards." She smiled then. It was not a cruel smile. It was worse. It was the smile of someone who had won completely and knew it. The battle lasted 48 hours total. When it was over, every single council ship had been disabled and captured. Not one was destroyed. Human casualties, 17 wounded, none killed. Council casualties, over 4,000 wounded, 200 dead from accidents and panic. Not from intentional targeting. The message was clear to everyone watching. Humanity could have killed them all. They chose not to. Du Heian Choi sat in his office on Earth and executed the final phase of his plan. Every major news network across Council space suddenly found their systems compromised. They did not go offline. Instead, they all began broadcasting the same thing, complete footage of the battle, with human commentary explaining each tactical decision. Billions of Council citizens watched their invincible military get systematically dismantled by the species they had mocked as weak. They watched human pilots execute maneuvers their own pilots said were impossible. They watched human Marines board ships and capture crew members without harming them unnecessarily. They watched, and they understood. Humanity had been holding back. For 50 years, humanity had been pretending to be harmless, and the Council had been foolish enough to believe it. Ambassador Gyewan Kim appeared on screens across the galaxy. He stood in front of the captured Council fleet, which floated in Earth orbit like trophies. "For 3 generations," Gyewan said quietly, "humanity sought peaceful coexistence. We followed your laws. We respected your traditions. We endured your contempt. We built your stations. We maintained your systems. We asked only for fair treatment in return." He paused. His face was calm, but his eyes were hard. "You mistook our civilization for weakness. You mistook our restraint for inability. Today you learned the truth. Humans are not weak. We simply chose not to be monsters. That choice was contingent on reciprocal respect. You failed to provide it." On his homeworld, Speaker Thaldros watched this broadcast with growing horror. His carefully maintained peace was gone. His authority was shattered. The Council's reputation was destroyed. He sent a desperate communication to Earth. He offered everything. Full reparations. Return of all seized territories. Humanity elevated to senior Council leadership. Anything, everything, just please. Please stop. G1 received the message and read it carefully. Then he sent his response. "Your offer is noted," Juan said. "Here are humanity's actual terms. Immediate cessation of all hostilities. Full investigation of anti-human policies. Reparations for all seized colonies. And fundamental restructuring of Council authority to prevent future exploitation of any species." Thaldros sagged with relief. These terms were harsh, but acceptable. He began to reply, began to agree. Then Juan continued speaking. "One more thing," Juan said. "Humanity will not join the Council's senior leadership. We have no desire to rule you. We simply demand you never try to rule us again." Thaldros stared at the screen in confusion. They did not want power? After winning so completely, after demonstrating such overwhelming superiority, they did not want to take control. "We will enforce these terms," Juan said, "but we will not govern you. You will govern yourselves. You will simply do so fairly, or you will answer to us. Is this clear?" Thaldros nodded slowly at his screen. It was clear, painfully clear. Humanity did not want to conquer the Council. They just wanted to be left alone, and now everyone knew what happened if you did not leave them alone. 3 months after what the galaxy, now called the 48-Hour War, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The chamber looked the same as always, but everything felt different. The floating seats were occupied by nervous representatives who spoke more carefully than they used to. The ancient walls carried the weight of recent humiliation. At the center of the chamber stood a cage made of energy fields. Inside the cage stood Magistrate Vren, no longer proud or loud. He looked tired and small, like someone who had learned a lesson too late to do him any good. Magistrate Vren, Speaker Thaldros said heavily, "You are charged with illegal seizure of sovereign territory, abuse of council authority, and inciting military conflict through negligence and arrogance. How do you plead?" Vren looked at the new human delegation sitting where his supporters used to sit. Ambassador Giwan Kim watched him with calm, empty eyes. The same eyes he had worn when he walked out of the council 3 months ago. "Guilty," Vren said quietly. It was the first time in council history that a senior official had been held accountable by a species they had considered inferior. It would not be the last across the galaxy. Director Soman Lee stood on a rebuilt human colony in the Kepler belt and watched construction drones work. The colony was coming back to life, but it looked different now. Defensive platforms orbited overhead. Military patrol ships made regular rounds. Human flags flew alongside signs that read in several languages, "Protected Territory. Approach with respect." "How are the settlers adjusting?" her assistant asked. Salman smiled slightly. "They are nervous. They spent years being told humanity was weak. Now they have warships protecting them and they do not know how to feel about it. Should they be nervous?" "No," Salman said. "The warships are not for threatening people. They are for making sure nobody threatens us again." "There is a difference." Her assistant nodded. "The council has requested permission to send cultural observers to study how we rebuilt so quickly." "Tell them yes," Salman said. "But they come unarmed and they follow our rules. We are done pretending we have no rules." In universities across council space, new courses were being offered. Human strategic thinking, the psychology of patient aggression, how to identify hidden military capacity. Students packed into lecture halls. Desperate to understand how an entire species had fooled them for 50 years, Professor Doyen Choi taught one such course at a prestigious council university. He still looked like a tired technician, still wore simple clothes, still seemed like someone you would not notice in a crowd. But his lectures were filled to capacity. The question everyone asks, Doyen said to his class, is how did we hide so much for so long? The answer is simple. We did not hide it. We did it right in front of you. You simply chose not to see. Student raised a tentacle. But the shipyards, the weapons development, the military training, how did our intelligence agencies miss all of it? Doyen smiled. Because you were looking for threats that matched why. Our expectations? You expected military buildups to look a certain way. Aggressive, obvious, loud. We built ours quietly, patiently, in places you never bothered to look. We used civilian infrastructure. We trained soldiers in the guise of emergency responders. We tested weapons while claiming to mine asteroids. Pulled up a holographic display showing a human. Station. This is Station Kepler 3. The Council's intelligence files classified it as a mining operation. It was actually a military shipyard. But because we put mining in the name and occasionally shipped some ore, nobody looked closer. The class was silent. Several students looked embarrassed. The lesson, Doyen continued, is not that humans are uniquely clever. The lesson is that assumptions are dangerous. You assumed we were weak because we were peaceful. You assumed we were incapable because we were polite. You assumed you knew us because we smiled at you. Paused. His expression serious. In the interest of transparency, I am going to publish every backdoor, every exploit, every vulnerability my team and I created in council systems. All of it, free, public. Anyone can read it. The class erupted in shocked whispers. A student called out, but then we can defend against it. Yes, Doyen agreed. You can, and you should. We are showing you our methods because we want you to be secure. We do not want to rule through fear. We want to coexist through mutual respect. He smiled slightly. Of course, if you study the methods and still do not see the other tools we left behind, that is your problem. We said we would be transparent. We never said we would be stupid. Captain Minho Kong stood on the bridge of the Silent Judge and looked at a star map showing uncharted space beyond Council territory. His orders had changed. No more combat missions. No more surveillance. Now he was an explorer again, heading into the unknown. Sir, his navigation officer said, we are ready to jump whenever you give the order. Minho nodded slowly. Good. It will be nice to see new things instead of fighting old enemies. Do you think we will find threats out there? Someone asked. Probably, Minho said. The universe is big. There are always threats. But now the galaxy knows humanity can handle threats. Maybe that knowledge will keep us safe. Maybe it will not. Either way, we are ready. The Silent Judge jumped to faster-than-light travel and vanished into the dark. Behind it, the Council species watched humanity's exploration fleets depart with mixed feelings. Relief that the humans were pointing their ships away from Council space. Worry about what the humans might find. Curiosity about whether humanity would share what they discovered. On the Vrelian homeworld, something unexpected was happening. A young human diplomat named Hannah Im was meeting with reform-minded Vrelian politicians. She was patient and kind, willing to listen to their side of things. Willing to acknowledge that not all Varians had supported Varen's aggressive policies. Why are you here? One Varelian asked her suspiciously. Your people won. You humiliated us. Why not just leave us alone? Hannah smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and sad at the same time. Because we do not want enemies, she said. We never did. We wanted friends, partners, equals. When you treated us badly, we fought back because we had to. But now the fighting is over. Now we have a choice. We can hold grudges forever, or we can build something better. The Vrelian was quiet for a moment. You really mean that? As Hannah said. We really do. It will take time. Trust is not rebuilt quickly. But if you are willing to try, so are we. Slowly, carefully, humanity and the Varian people began the long process of reconciliation. It was painful. There were setbacks. There were people on both sides who wanted revenge instead of peace. But there were also people who wanted something better. They worked hard to make it happen. Fleet Admiral Han Park stood in his office on Earth and prepared for retirement. 40 years of service. 40 years of preparing for a war he hoped would never come. 48 hours of actual fighting. Now it was time to let someone younger take over. Any regrets? His replacement asked him. Hyun considered the question carefully. I regret that war was necessary. I regret the casualties, even though we minimized them as much as possible. I regret that the Council did not listen to peaceful requests. He paused. But I do not regret being prepared. If we had not built our fleet in secret, if we had not planned for the worst, we would have been conquered. Being peaceful does not mean being helpless. That is the lesson I hope future generations remember. His replacement nodded seriously. We will remember. Ambassador Ji-won Kim returned to the Council chambers for the first time since walking out 3 months ago. Representatives stood as he entered. Some out of respect. Some out of fear. Some out of genuine relief that humanity was willing to negotiate again. Speaker Thaldros, who had managed to keep his position through very careful apologies and immediate reforms, welcomed Gi-won back personally. Ambassador Kim Thaldros said formally. The Council is grateful for your return. Guan nodded politely, but did not smile. We are here to work together, but things are different now. I assume you understand that, yes, Thaldros said quietly. We understand. The Council session began. It was strange and awkward. Humans now sat in senior positions alongside species that had governed the galaxy for thousands of years. Every proposal was examined more carefully than before. Every vote was counted with proper respect. Every species, not just the powerful ones, had their concerns taken seriously. It was not perfect. There were still arguments. There were still disagreements. But nobody laughed at human complaints anymore. Nobody dismissed their concerns. Nobody assumed they were too weak to defend themselves. One young delegate, a human named Taijin Ri, who had grown up after the war, made an interesting observation during a trade negotiation. My parents' generation had to pretend to be harmless to survive, Taijin said. They smiled when they wanted to scream. They bowed when they wanted to fight. They spent 50 years being something they were not. He looked around the chamber. My generation does not have to do that. We can be ourselves, strong when we need to be, peaceful when we want to be, honest about both. That is the real victory, not the warships, not the captured fleet. The freedom to be authentic. The chamber was quiet. Several older delegates looked uncomfortable, but several younger ones, from various species, nodded in agreement. The story could have ended there, with triumph and reformation and hope for the future. But there was one more scene that mattered. Director Salmon Lee stood in a garden on Earth's orbital station. She was older now, with gray in her hair and lines around her eyes. She tended to plants from dozens of worlds, creating beauty from diversity. Each plant needed different care, different soil, different amounts of light. But they all grew together in the same garden. A young Verlaine diplomat approached her nervously. He was barely more than a child by his species standards. Director Lee, he said hesitantly. May I ask you something? Of course, Salmon said, not looking up from her work. When will humanity forgive us? For what Magistrate Vren did. For what my people did. Salmon stopped working. She looked at the young Vrillian with kind eyes. We forgave you the moment the war ended, she said gently. Forgiveness is easy. It is a choice you make. You decide not to carry anger anymore, so you put it down. Then why do you still have warships? The young diplomat asked. Why do you still patrol our borders? If you forgave us, why not trust us? Salmon smiled. It was the old smile again, the genuine one. Because forgiveness and trust are different things. I can forgive you for breaking my window. But if you have a history of throwing rocks, I am going to install better glass. That is not punishment. That is wisdom. She turned back to her plants. Trust is earned through consistent action over time. Your generation has the opportunity to earn it, not by apologizing, not by feeling guilty, but by building a better future, by treating all species fairly, by remembering what happens when you do not. The young Vrelian nodded slowly. How long will that take? As long as it takes, Salmon said. But we have time. We have patience. And now you understand, we have always had strength. We simply hoped we would never need to prove it. She smiled at him again. We still hope that. Every single day. That is what it means to be human. We prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. High above Earth, the defensive fleet maintained its silent watch. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Just there. A reminder. A promise. A choice that humanity made every day to be peaceful but never helpless again. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity hoped it would not need to be taught twice. But if it did, humanity was ready. They would always be ready, because courteous mode could be turned off. But it could also be turned back on. The choice belonged to everyone, human and alien alike. Yes. To decide which version of humanity they wanted to meet. The galaxy wisely chose courtesy.